Good morning. Again, my name is Joshua. We're both followers. We hop on these live streams so we can go through a topic or a couple Bible verses and then get into questions, prayer requests, things like that you guys have down below live. We have over 1,100 other videos that you can watch, but all sorts of different biblical topics. And but these are live so that we can interact with you guys. So happy late Thanksgiving. Hope you guys had a great Thanksgiving. And we are continuing in Genesis 24. We started in it last time, and we're going to keep going through it. Like I said, if you guys are interested in any of the t-shirts, go to boldfollower.com, and if you type in the code livestream, you get 10% off. We recommend you do that before the end of December to make sure they get there before Christmas, because, like I said, everything is, we're a very tiny operation, and so the sooner you do it, the better. Anyway, thank you so much for all your support, even just watching, liking, commenting, subscribing, or just, anything that you guys praying for people in the comments, all that stuff. We do appreciate you. So Genesis 24, 16 through 21, this is going to be the servant, Eleazar. He's going to be always surprised. He waits for complete confirmation of his prayer. Now the young woman was very beautiful to behold, a virgin. No man had known her. And she went down to the well and filled her pitcher and came up. And the servant ran to meet her and said, "Please, let me drink a little water from your pitcher." So she said, "Drink, my lord." And then she quickly let down her pitcher to her hand and gave him a drink. And when she had finished giving him a drink, she said, "I will draw water for your camels also until they have finished drinking." And she quickly emptied her pitcher into the trough, ran back to the door to draw water, and drew for all of his camels. And the man, wondering at her, remained silent so as to know whether the Lord has made his journey prosperous or not. We talked about this before. I'm very clear about my particular stance on how you are supposed to be when you're single. I am very against dating unless you're dating to marry, because you're able to fully dedicate yourself to God and fully dedicate yourself to others. You're not distracted by having to date someone, and there's all these mixed things of, I gotta do this, I gotta do that, and then even, but not just dating, just other things, anchoring yourself down. She was fully dedicated to being able to love the Lord with all of her heart and love others with all of her heart. And we see that here. Hey, what's up? What's up, Panther? Looking good with the beard. Oh, thanks. When it gets a little cold, sometimes I throw it up there. Plus, sometimes we do a fundraiser for the church where the kids buzz my head. And if they buzz my head, I figure just, buzz my beard too, so I grow it out sometimes. So, so thanks so much. Good to see you, man. Happy Thanksgiving. Hope you had a good one. So this is the same thing. And I love how she not only creates time, right? You create time for what you need to do. She created time to bless this complete stranger, and not just him, but his camels in this incredible way. Not just does she do this, but look at the language that it says. She quickly let down her pitcher. And it says that she quickly emptied her pitcher, right? And then she ran. This is such an amazing work ethic that she's having for this complete stranger. She's not getting money for it. She's not getting any benefits. She's literally just blessing them. And the way that she is blessing them is she's not just dragging her feet or doing it lazily. She's working really well. She's a very, very hard worker. And this is how we need to be. That's why I'm saying you got to look at people, people talk to me all the time about well, what should I look for in a mate and things like that. See, are they good workers? Are they, can they put their hand to the plow? Can they really put in the work? And this is what she was doing. And she was doing this for complete strangers. And so we know that she would do this in other situations too. It just shows just a tremendous character of not just doing these things, right? And also this is not just a fulfillment of the prayer that Eleazar prayed. Most likely Eleazar, like I said, there's a little bit of controversy. It may not be Eleazar, but the chief leader here of Abraham's items and things like that. It's not only did she do it, but she blew it out of the water. And this was just amazing. This is what we need to do. We need to be going towards God 100%, 100 miles per hour as fast as we can. And as we're doing that, then we'll look over and see that somebody is running alongside us. And that will most likely be the spouse that God has chosen for us. But we need to be going after God wholeheartedly. And look at her. This is not a half-hearted thing. Like, oh, I guess I'll just, she ran. She did things quickly. She did it immediately. It was amazing. The young woman was very beautiful to behold. We generally regard the Bible as being given an understatement. When we read Rebekah was very beautiful to behold, we're going to say that indeed she was very beautiful. Beauty does matter. This is actually mentioned as well about Sarah. Sarah was beautiful. And so it would make sense that someone like Isaac, who came from Abraham had a beautiful wife. He's going to want a beautiful spouse. And I know there's our culture kind of goes two ways on it. Focusing just on beauty is not healthy, but completely ignoring taking care of yourself is also not healthy. We should want to take care of ourselves in a healthy manner. Of course, there's proper boundaries, proper lines for it for both genders to make sure that they uphold themselves. Men need to look handsome, women need to look presentable. There's all this stuff. And that's between you and your spouse when you get married. Make sure you make yourself presentable to them. I think that's good. We, as Christ's bride, make ourselves beautiful to him by adorning ourselves with what? The righteous acts that we do. As the bride of Christ, we want to make ourselves look beautiful for our husband, God. And we see that also within a scripture as back in the day, that's what they used to do, is someone would get betrothed. And while they were getting betrothed, we talked about this story before, is when the man goes to his house, he's going to build a mansion for his wife. There's this whole conversation Jesus had about, hey, I'm going to go build a mansion for you, right? While he's doing that, he's preparing a nice place for her. He's going to take care of her very nice and satisfy her needs as much as he can, things like that. Well, she is over there trying to adorn herself, making herself beautiful for him. And so this idea of beauty is very biblical. So I think, but at the same time, not in an unhealthy way, right? So, but it's somewhere in the middle. Our culture is like all physical beauty. It shouldn't be all physical beauty. You need to make sure that the inside is beautiful as well. But you also can't neglect that and just ignore it. You need to make sure that you take care of everything. It's like, the walk with God is everything. Your body is your temple. Take care of your temple. And we know that, especially in this, she was very beautiful, So Rebekah is one of those women who the Bible specifically says was beautiful. There's others. Remember, Sarah was beautiful. Rachel also was beautiful, Genesis 29. Abigail, 1 Samuel 25:3 is beautiful. Bathsheba, 2 Samuel 11:2 was beautiful. Tamar, 2 Samuel 14:27 was beautiful. Queen Vashti of the Persians was beautiful. Esther 1:11. Esther herself, Esther 2:7, she was beautiful. And the daughters of Job, 42:15. They were all beautiful. So the Bible is not against beautiful women or making yourself look beautiful, making yourself, caring about your appearance. That's not what it is. And when Paul talks about that, he's like, do not make your adornment merely outward. But there's nothing wrong with wanting to make sure you take care of yourself and presentable to, especially your spouse. There's nothing wrong with that. But like I said, there is an unhealthy level of it, and that's to be determined everywhere. And our society is sort of one way or the other. I feel like so many people are like, it's just what on the inside that counts, and that's the only thing that matters. And then people are like, oh, it's just what's on the outside. It's really, truly something in the middle. All right. The servant ran to meet her. And by the way, looks do fade just over time. That's just naturally what happens. So you can't rely on that either, right? So she could be the most beautiful person, but over time, looks will fade. So she makes sure she's also beautiful on the inside as well. Because, that's just what happens when you get older. My wife was just commenting on my double chin the other day. I was like, I'm there. All right. So the servant did not think it was unspiritual to introduce himself to Rebekah. Yet he certainly did not do anything to suggest that she should provide water to his camels. Prayer is no substitute for action. We'll talk about this too. So really the way you should do it, you should pray as if no action will help, but act as if no prayer will help. You need to make sure that you're doing things. Unless God has specifically told you and you feel very clearly that God says, be still, wait, then you need to be doing something. I'm not saying like you do God's part. Do your part. And what's your part? Your part is acting in integrity. Your part is reading the scriptures. Your part is blessing others. Your part is blessing God, right? So whatever that looks like, don't, make sure you're doing the minimums, right? At least, so many people I bring up this too, is like prayer, just because you pray and you want something. Mission work is one of those, people come to me all the time. Oh, I feel called to missions. Like, okay, well, what are you doing now? How are you serving now? And like, that is a major indicator. Like if you're faithful with little, he'll bless you with much. But don't think that once you're on the mission field, that's when you're going to start, doing missions work. No, do missions work now. Have a repertoire of things that you're doing, people that you're blessing, communities that you're helping, ethnicities that you're working with, right? Things like that. Prayer is no substitute for action. You still need to act, unless God has been very clear that you're not to act. And he drew all for his camels. Then as Rebekah began the hard work, like I said, this is hard work, of watering all the camels, the servant did not stop her. He wanted a woman who would not only say that she would water the camels, but who would actually do the hard work. He was amazed as he watched her do this. He says he wondered at her. This was impressive. This was amazing. This was admirable. I remember when I was single, looking at my wife before we were married, just admired, like just in wonder, like wow, like she's willing to do this, go on this trip and sacrifice her comforts and go on these, this mission trip. I was always in wonder of like, wow, like she really loves these children well. She loves her friends well. She takes care of, just all these things, just being really like, wow, like, so yes, he was, so, and understand this is the two part, right? He was impressed because she was beautiful, but even more impressed that she was, just acted in such amazing, wonder and ethics and just taking care of all this stuff. So like I said, it's both. It's both. So her beauty was something that may have caught his eye, but at the same time, it's how she acted. It's the beauty on the inside. It's not just that she did what he ultimately kind of wanted from picking a spouse for Isaac, but she did it with flying colors. I mean, like, this would have blown my mind too. It's like, the fact that she's doing it immediately and fast and quickly, and she ran. She drew for all of his camels. As Rebekah began the hard work of watering all the camels, right? Perhaps Eleazar knew for some it is much easier to talk like a servant than to actually serve. He wanted to see if she actually had a servant's heart, not only a servant's talk. A lot of people all talk. Let's see you actually do it. She actually did it. Not just did it, but she did it flying colors. Genesis 24:22-28. This is where the servant, the bride, is basically being chosen, and he gives her rich gifts even before the marriage to his father's son. And we're going to talk about that a little bit. So it was when the camels had finished drinking that the man took a golden nose ring weighing half a shekel and 2 bracelets for her wrists weighing 10 shekels of gold and said, "Whose daughter are you? Tell me, please, is there a room in your father's house for us to lodge?" And so she said to him, "I am the daughter of Bethuel, Malach's son, whom she bore to Nahor." Moreover, she said to him, "We have both straw and feed enough for you to lodge." Then the man bowed his head and worshiped God, and he said, "Blessed be the God of my father Abraham, who has not forsaken his mercy and his truth towards my master. As for me, being on the way, the Lord led me to the house of my master's brethren." So the young woman ran again, here you go, and told her mother's household all these things. When the camels had finished drinking. So she went all the way to the end of doing what she needed to do. Abraham's servant let Rebekah complete the difficult job of providing water to his 10 camels. Sometimes you got to let people kind of do their own thing just to see, like, will they do it? And this is, you could think that he's kind of rude, but no, sometimes in leadership, sometimes we let people kind of struggle a little bit to see, like, can they do it on their own? Can they go through it on their own? I remember, now there's also times not to do this. I remember I was at a grocery store and I was the only cashier there. And it was like, I can't remember because it was so long ago, all the details, but remember, I was the only cashier there, and I had person after person after person after person, and then the manager was in the back room, and he just waited. He didn't help, and he let me kind of struggle through it. And at the end, finally, after I forget how many customers, just me, he came out and he helped. That he came back after it was all done and said, "I saw that you were struggling a little bit, but I knew you could do it. I believed in you." And sometimes we don't like that. We don't like when people don't just jump in and help. Well, you could help. Why aren't you helping? It's like, so we can see what's inside of you. So, and like I said, not just so others can see, so you can see. Sometimes we don't think we have it inside of us. And the only way to know that we have it inside of us is for us to be challenged. But usually we won't challenge ourselves. Something has to happen to where that we're kind of against a wall, and then we have to basically show courage, show being brave, show being a good worker, show ethic, show integrity. And sometimes it doesn't happen naturally. Sometimes circumstances have to sort of align for that. And this is kind of what happened is circumstances sort of aligned for it, and someone basically stepped back. And as much as I don't like that my manager did that, I'm not saying that as a manager you should be helping and leading your people, but every once in a while, if it could be for their benefit that you don't help them. And I know that sounds kind of crazy, especially in our generations that think like everyone should be helping me, and they all want a handout and they all feel entitled and stuff like that. Like, sometimes it's good to like know that you did it yourself. And if you have kids, you know this too. As much as I'd love to help my kid every time, it is good to let them struggle a little bit so that they can have the satisfaction knowing that they did it themselves. And this is good sometimes to give them the opportunity to be proud of them doing their homework, proud that they made the snowman, proud that they painted the picture. Do you understand? Like, so as a parent, we see this a little bit, but also this is, she can be proud of her work, and feel good about her accomplishment, right? She did the whole thing. He brings out a golden nose ring, 2 bracelets for her wrists, it weighed 10 shekels of gold. After Rebekah fulfilled the sign of Abraham's servant prayed for, he immediately revealed the precious gift for her. This was a sign of his generosity and wealth. his master presented, and she gets to keep these gifts regardless. Whose daughter are you? Having already revealed the gifts indicating that Rebekah was an answer to the servant's prayer, but then he asked about her family, and he praised God when he found out she was related to Abraham's family. We talked about this before. This was what was so awesome about this is, you go back in, where was it, 15? Because he was looking for a specific thing. He was looking for somebody who was from Bethuel, the son of Milcah, wife of Nahor, who was Abraham's brother. And so you see this cadence, right? And she hits every single one. And so we see this here. There's repetition of hits every single one. It's possible this is more poetic than we think it is, because a lot of the scripture is it's all truth, but it's not all the same type of truth. This could be written in, and honestly, the way that it's written, especially Genesis 24, it does give me kind of poetic vibes. If you read kind of the beginning, there's this is basically repeated. There's a lot of things that are repeated a lot within Genesis 24. So this whole thing could probably be written as a song, depending on how it was originally written in the original language. But yeah, if you look at that, there's a lot of repetition, right? I'm looking for someone from this house, of this one's brother. And then he found the person of this one, of this one, of this one's brother. And then later he's going to talk about this one, right? So it's just repetition. It's really beautiful. I love to watch you struggle. Thanks, Panther. Yeah, Panther's in there in the chat, and he helps out with answering questions and stuff like that. Sometimes he holds back so that I can struggle a little bit. Thanks. Yeah, no, but it's good. It's honestly, it's good. It's kind of like, I mean, anybody done weightlifting? You worked out? You need a spotter, but that spotter can't take the weight from you. The spotter is just there to help a tiny bit, just a little bit, to make sure you get the majority of the weight. So yeah, thanks, man. All right, so this is kind of what it is. Being on the way, the Lord sent me. This showed the mentality of the servant. He felt that he was under his duty to be on the way and to trust God that he would guide him along the way. It's harder to steer a parked car, right? We want to be guided by the Lord. We need to be on our way. This is a quote. I actually don't know if Reinhard Bonnke created this. Probably didn't, but he says even God won't steer a parked car. Be on your way. Be doing something. God will steer it. And then the young woman ran and told her mother's house all these things. It is easy to picture Rebekah's excitement. A day likely started like any others turned out to be a remarkable game-changing day. Think about this. She is just showing her character, doing something she would do any other day. She did not know that this was a guy to bless her. And all of a sudden, she's just doing her thing, right? She's being faithful. This is a heart of mine too. Is she's being found faithful, and boom, she gets this amazing blessing. We talked about this too. This is kind of why I do the YouTube channels. I just want to be found faithful. I feel like preaching is something that I really enjoy doing, that I feel like God has given me a love for. And so I want to be found faithful with that desire. And that I don't want any of my talents to be buried. I've said this a bunch of times. And so this is what she's doing. Whether or not, she wasn't necessarily doing, she didn't see a king and say, oh, I'm gonna take care of this king. She just was doing what she does always. And as she's doing what she does always, then God will bring the promotion, God will bring the blessing, God will bring the providence, God will bring the resources, all that stuff. And I'm believing that for myself, I'm believing that for you. Stay found faithful to what God has given you, and then God will give you more, and God will elevate you, and God will promote you in the right time. Do not grow weary in doing good, for in the right time, God will, give you rest and bring about the things that you're called for. And so this is what she was doing. She was just being faithful, and God is going to reward that. And I believe that for you. I believe that for me. I believe that for all those watching, things like that. And understand this, that when you talk about the dowry, when you talk about being given over to a bride and a groom, we talked about this last time, so I don't want to go too much into it. But basically, when you give the gifts, right, you give the gifts for the offer, to offer the bride the price. If she doesn't drink the wine, she gets to keep all the gifts. That's what I'm saying. That's why the whole thing about the Bible does protect women who are who are in these abusive situations, things like that. It says, well, a woman has to marry the person who abused her. Well, no, the guy has to give her the dowry. So basically, she depending on what the guy is, she could be set for life. I'm not saying that it's one for one, because there's no price to put on those things, but at least the Bible protects her. So if that guy is caught, which he would be, right, he would then owe her everything as if she was married to him, but she doesn't have to actually say yes. She has a choice to say yes or no. And so he gives all these gifts, and she could say no, right? She gets to keep the gifts whether he says it or not. This is the same thing with Jesus. Jesus provides his death. He provides everything for us. He dies for us, whether we say yes or no. He still does it, right? It's still gone, right? So he dies for the opportunity for us to say yes to him, right? Many people say no to him, but he still died. It's not that you say yes and then I'll die. It's I died and then you can say yes. Does that make sense? He gave everything for us and then we say yes. It's not, okay, say yes and then I'll give you everything. It's we give you everything and then now do you want to drink the cup, which is part of the ceremony of kind of a betrothal, right? This is why Jesus uses a cup. Like you drink a cup, you're basically saying that you're betrothed to God. What's up, small beginning? I know it says love can cover many sins. Do you think that this might help the L community that are, long-term monogamous, maybe? Small beginnings. So small beginnings has an interesting question. There's a Bible verse that says love covers a multitude of sins. Well, I think the issue is when they say like love is love. Let me look up the word. Love covers a multitude of sins. Let's find it out. First Peter 4. Sorry, I want to make sure I have the context because I almost guarantee you right now it's out of context. All right, First Peter 4. Sorry, so as you guys have questions, put them down below. I'll do my best to get to as many as possible. All right, and what was that? First Peter 4:8. Okay. All right, since therefore Christ suffered in the flesh, arm yourselves with the same way of thinking, for whoever has suffered in the flesh has ceased from sin. So also, as you live for the rest of the time in your flesh, no longer for human passions, but of the will of God. For the time that is past suffices for doing what the Gentiles do, living in sensuality, passions, drunkenness, orgies, drinking parties, and lawless idolatry. With respect to this, they are surprised when you do not join them in the same flood of debauchery, and they malign you. But they will give account to him who is ready to judge living and dead. For this is why the gospel was preached even to those who are dead, so that we talked about a lot of this before, but though judged in the flesh the way the people are, they might live in the spirit the way God does. And the end of all things is at hand. Therefore, be self-controlled, be sober-minded, and for the sake of the prayer, above all, keep loving one another earnestly, since love covers a multitude of sins. Show hospitality to one another without grumbling, each has received a gift and use it for one another as good stewards of God's varied grace. Whoever speaks, let one speak of the oracle of God. Whoever serves, one is the strength that God supplies. And in order that in everything God may be glorified through Jesus Christ, to him be the glory, the honor, and dominion. Honestly, I feel like if someone were to be like, oh, love is love, and because love covers a multitude of sins, you can just continue on with your sin, it literally neglects like the verses that are not even like 3 verses up, very clearly saying for the time pacifies, right? The Gentiles living in sensuality, passions, drunkenness, orgies, drunken party, lawless idolatry. Yeah, I think it's terribly out of place. Terribly out of place. Like, oh, well, because I love them, which is there's so many issues with that. Well, what is love? We talk about this too. God's love includes warning, right, and telling the truth. And the truth is these things are sin. So just because you like doing it, I mean that's ridiculous. There's a million examples of things that feel good that are wrong to do, right? I don't think so. I don't think small beginnings too. I think just literally just reading the same chapter that verse is from would give you the inclination of like what this is saying is love one another, right? Forgiving one another. This, acting in charity, right? Loving one another earnestly. And if you love one another earnestly, that love is going to cover a multitude of sins, right? Showing hospitality. This is basically taking care of one another. This is our directions with other people. But to try and say that, oh, love covers a multitude of sins so that they can live with this monogamous relationship that's clearly sin, I think it completely contradicts the very beginning of that. Plus, it starts off with saying, hey, Christ suffered in the flesh. You need to cease from sin, right? Don't live that way. It says very clearly, just before this verse, it says, as to live for the rest of the time in the flesh, no longer for human passions. We define love as what feels good. That's not love. So we become God and we say, well, if it feels good, it's love. No, it's not. And if it feels good, it's good. No, it's not. I don't want to get into too much like graphic details, but there's so many things that feel good that are wrong to do. And we know this. I don't know. I think people who use that in that context are completely abusing the scriptures. Not just slightly, because that, I've heard better arguments. This verse is the worst argument, one of the worst arguments, because because I'm loving. No, it's not love. God doesn't. That's not the way it should be. I don't know. I don't know. It'd be like somebody like wiring money from that, it'd be like somebody like stealing credit cards to donate to St. Jude. It's like, well, yeah, but I'm donating to St. Jude. Like that's good, right? Yeah, donating to St. Jude is good, but if you're stealing credit card numbers and defrauding other people to do it, it's not good. Like Just because the end result is something good or has a good concept does not mean that God approves the methods of getting there. Just because you're caring for somebody doesn't mean that God approves for it. So I think this, yeah, no, I think small beginnings, I think that's an open and shut case. I think if somebody ever says that, be like, hey, can you read the rest of that verse for me? Start off with Christ's suffering. Understand this, and I have said this 100 times. This is my belief, is that as Psalm 51:5 says, I was born a sinner, from my mother's womb I was sinful, that we do have inclinations from birth, and we do have sins that some of us gravitate to, others of us gravitate to other sins, whatever. We talk about this all the time. Is that sin may still be a struggle for them. And so I don't think once they come to Christ, now all of a sudden they don't have feelings or struggle. I think they still do that. They just have the power to say no. I said, you were saved from the punishment of sin. You're being saved from the power of sin. You will be saved from the presence of sin. The presence of sin hasn't been gone yet. You're being saved from the power, so you're able to say no. Does that mean that you no longer have those impulses, those desires, those things? No, I think that is a constant struggle. We see that right there. You join in Christ's suffering. Part of that is actually persecution, but the other part of that is your flesh needs it. Basically, you starve it. It's hard sometimes to say no to your flesh. So anyway, that's my thoughts on that. I feel like, look, if they're going to use a verse to try and defend their lifestyle, not this one, because this one I feel like, there's so many different ways to argue it just within the same chapter. So that's my thoughts on that. Good question. And I see Panthers in there. And Panthers' response is, you know how it says love can cover... Love can cover sins in what aspect? Because lust is a sin. That's true. Do you mean caring for somebody or caring for another to distract them? Haven't seen that verse. Ask any biblical questions you have in the chat. We got you. Yep. And also, I think it's good to know that you can love and care for somebody. Right, here's the deal. You can love somebody. You can really care for somebody, but it doesn't have to become sexual. There's always boundaries. If you have kids, there's a boundary there, right? And there should be a boundary there for how you love your kids, right? If you have, I know this is kind of graphic, but animals and things like that, there are boundaries for that. Even your parent, there are boundaries. And I know this is kind of weird, right? But everyone acknowledges some sort of boundary to how to love, right? But then they don't want to agree on it. They want to say, well, I'm going to define the boundary. Okay, well, if everyone is defining the boundary, if heaven forbid something were to be done to you that would be love, right? Some sort of act of passion done to you, you could never say it was wrong, right? You have no rights to say that somebody abusing you is wrong if you're literally saying it doesn't matter, everybody do whatever they want. No, that's not true. And as a parent, I can tell you right now, like, people better not be doing XYZ with with my kids, or right? Like, there are boundaries. There are boundaries. If you are married, then anyone else doing anything sexual with your partner is wrong. It's a boundary. So we all recognize that love has boundaries. There's certain ways to act to love. And I believe one of the things that's very interesting in the LBG community that they don't understand is the way that David loved Jonathan, it says that he loved him with his own soul. I don't think this is a phrase that's used anywhere else. There's a love between a dude and a dude that's beyond anything mentioned in scripture. But it wasn't sexual. It didn't have to be, I love you, and so I have to marry you. It's two dudes platonically loving each other like bros. Like, I can't explain it, but there is a way that I have so much love for some guys in my life. They're just like, it's not better than my wife, because my wife is the best, but it's different. And it's on another level. It's very hard to explain. I don't know, maybe girls have like girlfriends and there's like a love there. But it doesn't mean that it has to cross the boundary of sexuality, right? Just because I love my friend Mark, or my friend Carson, or whoever my friend is, it doesn't mean that I have to cross that level of intersexuality. I can just love them. And like, dude, they're my dudes. Like, I could call them up any day and they'd be there. I can say I need something and they'd be there right there. Like, they care for me. They love me and I love them. And I'm not scared to say that I love a dude. But it's not a sexual love. It's a completely different type of love. The same way you love your kids, you love them more than anything else, but it's not a sexual type of love. You love your parents more than anyone else, but it's not a sexual type of love, right? You love I know this is graphic, you love your pets more than, but there's not a sexual type of love. So that's what I'm saying. We understand there are limits and boundaries and ways to love properly. We understand this, but we want to define it. And God gives us the definition. We need to accept his definition. Any sexual love outside of one man, one woman in a covenantal relationship with God, right, in marriage, is Wrong. That is the only time it is ever acceptable. And he made that very clear throughout all of Scripture, right? And people talk about burning passions meant for men, whatever, all this stuff. It doesn't matter, right? Because if he had listed off everything, which Jesus didn't do, he just affirmed the marriage covenant. That's what he did. He affirmed the marriage covenant. Because if he had gone through all the things, and then guess what? In 2,000 years, they're going to come out with cyber. Well, what about over the internet? Well, what about with a plastic doll, right? Not everything was existent over there. He just said, hey, this is what it should be. Because there's going to be somebody who's going to raise their hand, but what about with a tree, right? And I know that sounds funny, but this is what it is. So with those communities, and that's why also it's a struggle. It's a sin, like you or me, or somebody struggles with kleptomania, or anything else, right? It's a sin, so they struggle with it. And struggling is okay. Struggling doesn't mean, just because you still struggle with sin doesn't mean that God gave that to you, so you need to give into it. That just means that you're human and you're actually walking out a walk with Christ. Anyway, I could go on and on about that, but yeah, no, the love covers a multitude of sins. That is not, I feel like that is so far from what it means. Thank you. Good question. Thanks, Panther. Yeah, love is deep respect. Yeah, that's good. That's a good way to say it. I have an incredibly deep respect for the guys who stood up at my wedding, Andrew and Cody, and a lot of these guys. I have such a deeper, and even my father-in-law, I have such a deep respect for him. And my father, who's passed on, and my grandfather, probably the man I've loved the most. There was nothing, you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, I don't know. All right, so let's go. Good question. Genesis 24, 29 through 33. Now Rebekah had a brother whose name was Laban. And he ran out to the man by the well. And so it came to pass that when he saw the nose ring and the bracelets on his sister's wrist, that's what I'm saying. There's like repetition, a lot of repetition in Genesis 24. This had to have been some sort of like cadence of a song. And when he came to pass, when he saw the nose ring and the bracelets on his sister's wrist, that he heard the words of his sister Rebekah saying, that the man spoke to me. And then he went to the man and therefore stood by the camels of the well and said, come, O blessed of the Lord, why do you stand outside? For I prepared the house, this place for the camels. And then the man came to the house and he unloaded the camels and provided the straw with him. And the food was set before him to eat. But he said, I will not eat until I have told about my errand. And then he said, speak on. Look at this. Not just is Rebekah running and being urgent and acting in quickness, but also her brother. Her brother ran out and he quickly prepared the place for the camels and for Eleazar. Rebekah had a brother, right? The father of Rebekah was Bethuel, who was still alive. That was referenced back in Genesis 24. Yet it seemed that Laban took the lead in representing the family. Perhaps Laban was already known for his ability to make a deal with his advantage. When he saw the nose ring, the bracelets on his sister's wrist, Laban's eyes were on the riches the servant brought. He was motivated to show appropriate hospitality to this mysterious visitor and warmly greet him. Oh, come in, oh blessed of the Lord. That's why we talk about this too. I'm not against prosperity. I just think that shouldn't be your focus, and understand that you have seasons of it. Things that, like, clearly, like, sometimes God does bless materially, and we know that we've seen that with Abraham, right? But that's not the focus. Anyway, I will not eat until I have told about my errand. Abraham's servant was focused on the mission and that he would not be distracted from his fulfillment. Like every true servant of Christ, he put his master's business before his own ease or comfort, right? That's in Luke. He says, I'm about my Father's business. We need to not stop until we do what God has called us to do, right? We don't need to rest until we've done what God has called us to do. Even before the question of necessary food, when a man begins to think more of his eating than doing the will of God, he ceases to be a true-hearted minister. We need to elevate God above everything. And then we're going to go back into this in Genesis 24, 34 through 49. He's going to retell the story and the purpose of his visit. That's what I said. There's a lot of repetition within Genesis 24, which leads me to really believe that this is some sort of song that was probably written, or a poem. So I'm going to go through. There's going to be a lot that you're going to remember from the previous part, if you remember the last video that we had before Thanksgiving on Genesis 24. All right, I'm just going to go quickly through this since we kind of touched on it a lot already. All right, Genesis 34 through 49. So he said, I am Abraham's servant. The Lord has blessed my master greatly, and he has become great. And he has given him flocks and herds, and silver and gold, and male and female servants, and camels and donkeys. And Sarah, my master's wife, has borne a son to my master when he was old. And to him was given all that he has. And now my master made me swear, saying, you shall not take a wife for my son from the daughters of Canaanites, in whose land I dwell, but you shall go to my father's house and to my so I'm almost like singing it like on accident, right? It just feels like it's like we got like a cadence. Take a wife from her son. It said to my master, perhaps the woman will not father. So he said, perhaps the woman will not follow me. But he said to him, the Lord before whom I walk will send his angels with you and prosper you along your way. and you shall take a wife for my son and your family from your father's house, and you will be clear from the oath which you arrive among my when you arrive among my family. For if they will not give her to you, then you will be released from my oath. Right? We talk about that. The woman has a right to say no. Even arranged marriage, a woman could say no. And to this day I came to the well and said, O God, O master of my servant Abraham, if you now prosper the way which I should go, behold, I stand at the well with water. And it shall come to pass that when a virgin comes out to draw the water, and I say to her, please give me a little water from your pitcher to drink. And she says to me, drink, and I will draw for your camels too. Let her be the woman that the Lord has appointed for my master's son. But before I had finished speaking in my heart, there was Rebekah coming out with her pitcher on her shoulder. And when she went down to the well and drew water, I said to her, please let me drink. And she made haste and let down her pitcher from her shoulder. And she said, drink, I will give your camels a drink also. So then I drank, and she gave camels drink also. And then I asked her, I said, whose daughter are you? And she said, the daughter of Bethuel Nahor's son, Michal bore to him. And so I put on the nose ring on her and the bracelets on her wrists. And I bowed my head and worshipped the Lord, and blessed the Lord, the God of my master Abraham, who had led me in the way of truth, to take the daughter of my master's brother, a master of my master's brother for his son. Now, if you will deal kindly and truly with my master, tell me. If not, tell me that I may turn to the right hand or the left. So there's just a lot here. I don't know how much you want to dissect. We basically talked about almost all this before. A lot of this is almost the exact wording of previously in the chapter. That's what I'm saying. This is very cadency. I bet if you were to say this in the actual Hebrew, that it would have some sort of rhythm and song to it. There's a couple things to note here is that as he was praying, as we talked about this too, Isaiah 65, what is it, 65:24? Do you remember that verse? He says, before he was finished praying, Isaiah 65:24 says, it shall come to pass that before they call, I answer, and while they're still speaking, I will hear. And I feel like this is probably for somebody out there, is you are praying for something, and God's doing it. God is doing it. Before you started praying, he's doing it. But there's something it's just, you haven't seen it yet. But before you started praying, he answered it. This is kind of the story between Daniel. Daniel started praying. From the minute that he started praying, God released the angel. But there was something happening in the spiritual realm that didn't get to him for 21 days. But it still was released. It just wasn't yours. It was yours, but it wasn't yours. This is a lot of stuff within Scripture. I remember when I was going to get my pastoral license. This was it last year? Gosh, I don't know. Whenever it was. And I remember I was going through all these things, and I kept asking for more and more stuff. And the ceremony was at the end of May. And I remember, oh my God, I need to get this. Like, this is something that you called me for. Like, honestly, I didn't even want it, to be honest. But the church said I needed it to be. It was a whole thing. I never planned on being a pastor, but it was a whole process, and it was a long process, and it was a very difficult process. And on top of all the stuff that I was doing, they kept asking for more and more things. I had to, take all these tests and then do all this stuff. And I was like, man, God, I don't know. And we're right up to the deadline because it was about to be in May. And if it wasn't all in by May, I wouldn't graduate and walk the thing and for the school. And I'm in my third year now, so I have one more year to go. But that was at the end of the second year. And I remember I was like, God, like I was like, am I not going to do this? Am I not going to get it? Is this not for me? Am I not meant to be a pastor? Like all these things. But I remember that I finally worked out after all this extra stuff I was doing, basically leading right up until literally the week of the time that I was supposed to walk. They were still asking for things from me, to solidify stuff. I remember I walked across the stage and I got my little, you're a pastor now thing. And I went to the room afterwards, my wife and my kids. I remember I was looking at the little paper. They give you a little paper. It's kind of like in college, right? We certify that so-and-so is a minister of the gospel, et cetera, et cetera. I remember this was at the end of May. I remember looking at it and I saw it and I was reading it and it said, signed April 2nd. And so that means, even though all this other stuff was happening, I was cleared out. I was basically given the title. It was all there for me as of the beginning of April, even though it didn't feel that way, even though they kept asking for stuff, even though, things or this thing or that thing had to come in the way. I had it, but I didn't have it. And this is a lot of times the things that we see with Scripture is we have it, but we don't have it. And so this is what's happening is, as he was praying, right, he's praying for this thing, but God had already answered his prayer. So, he just didn't have it. He had it, but he didn't have it. And it's all ready, but not yet. This is a concept within the Scripture. I think that's what my class says, is it's all ready, but not yet. A lot of things are all ready, but not yet, right? You were saved from the punishment of sin. You're being saved from the power of sin, and you will be saved from the presence of sin. You're already saved from the power of sin, but you need to apply it. You need to grab it. It needs to take into effect. Some of the prayer requests that we're praying, and Lord, we're praying for a lot of stuff for our family. I believe that there's things on the way, that there's things that we are believing for that are on the way. They're already, but they're not yet. And it's hard to explain, but it's already, but it's not yet. And this is what it is. She's already there, but not yet. And so this is kind of the same concept that Eleazar is handling. He says, I am Abraham's servant. Abraham left Ur the Chaldees several decades before. This would have been a long, think about this. This would have been a long time, right? Decades, right? And his family must have wondered how he fared. Here, Abraham's servant explained the Lord had blessed my master gracefully, talking to Abraham, and went on to describe the blessings in material terms. The phrase, remember that his ultimate blessing is, God says, I will be your exceedingly great reward. So ultimately it's God. But he was also blessed in the physical. As we pray for all of us, to bless God, whatever you have for us, we accept anything and everything. We'll take it all, however you want to bless. The phrase, my master, is a refrain of this chapter. The word master occurs 22 times. Eleazar did not aspire to any independence of Abraham or of Abraham's son. His thoughts were of his master. His words were in the praise of his master. His deeds were on behalf of his master. He was not on his own, but the bondservant of another. And this is also our position. This is a quote from Spurgeon. We're talking about we need to be after God, but pointing everything to God, all to God. We talk about this too. That's why I don't like to, I like to make sure whatever you're doing, it points to God. Make sure people know, like, you're doing good things, not because you're good, not because it's a nice thing to do, but because of Jesus, because of what Jesus did. Find ways to point to Jesus. I understand that sometimes there's tact, but there's a quote that you hear me say all the time. I really don't care for it. I don't like it. People argue with me. It's a quote, was it St. Francis of Assisi? I forget exactly who. He says, preach the gospel, and if possible, if necessary, use words. And I would argue that it's always necessary to use words. It's 99% necessary to talk about Jesus, to make it clear that you are a Christian, that it's the God of the Bible that you believe in. That is the person you are pointing everything to. Not just, oh, I'm just doing nice things and maybe they'll ask about it. Tell them, be upfront about it. So many people, even if I present that and they kind of reject it, when stuff hits the fan, I tell this all the time. When my atheist friends, when stuff hits the fan, when people who are against Christianity, hate God, stuff hits the fan, they come to me because I've made it clear that I'm a Christian. Now it's a little bit easier because I'm a pastor, so it's like it's considered part of my DNA. But I was doing that before it was like, oh, what do you do? You're a pastor. I have a full-time job, but I don't identify with that at all. Like, but more than full-time job, 55 hours a week. But so this is kind of the idea of like, we point everything to Jesus. And I think as much as it makes sense, ask God to tactfully point it to Jesus. Let them know you're not just spiritual. It's about God, like our God, the true God, Yahweh, right? This is our God. This is who he is. All right, so anyway, so this is what Eleazar was saying. He was pointing all to Abraham, and then giving credit to God, right? So, but we go straight to God, right? To him he has given all that he has, right? Abraham's servant explained that his master not only had one heir, but that son would inherit all of his master's wealth. So basically everything you know about Abraham is going to be Isaac's, right? Not Ishmael. We talked about that too. Ishmael did get blessed. God did care for him. God is incredibly merciful and compassionate on him. But this promise and the covenants is only for Isaac. Eleazar explained the master's great faith in God. He says, the Lord who before whom I walk will send his angels with you and prosper your way. Right? Abraham never doubted that God would lead this servant to the right woman for Isaac. So making sure that it says, yes, it is for Abraham, but ultimately it's God providing the ultimate victory. If you deal kindly and truly with my master, tell me, right? If not, I will go away. We talk about that too. He's going to pay the price, and she can choose to say no, right? Because women had rights, women had value. Women could say, no, I don't want to marry him, right? She could say all these things, right? And that would leave Eleazar off the hook, because ultimately there's free will. We talk about this too. When someone's looking for a spouse, there's free will. They can choose, and you can choose, and you have to honor their free will. God is the perfect spouse, right? Jesus, at one of the last lines of scripture says, the Spirit and the bride say, come, right? Because we're talking about, we're basically betrothed to Jesus. It's this whole symbolism of marriage, and people sometimes alliterate Song of Solomon. Some people don't. They think it's weird, whatever. But the whole point is, yes, we are basically the bride of Christ. We are betrothed to Christ. He would be the perfect husband, right? But just because he's the perfect husband doesn't mean he's going to force us into a relationship with him. We need to choose that ourselves. The same way it would be unloving and uncaring and to override somebody's free will and force them into heaven force them into a relationship with God, right? It would be unloving if we were to force someone in a relationship with us, even though maybe we think that we would be the perfect spouse for them. We would be, overriding their free will if we force them to be with us. That's why people are like, why does God send people to hell? God doesn't send people to hell. Heaven is a place with God, with Jesus. If you reject Jesus in this life, you go to the place that is without Jesus. We talk about that. Yes, we talk about it. Yes, I believe it's a place of eternal torment and stuff like that. But the point is, God is not like, you're bad, go there. He's like, listen, do you want to be with me? And if you say yes of your own free will during life, then you go with him. But if you said no of your own free will in life, you go to a place without him. It's not about the gems and the buildings and the gold and stuff in heaven. It's about being with Jesus. So if you don't want to be with Jesus, he's going to honor your choice. The same thing here. He honors their choice. At BTBFBG says, bro, who do you think is the Antichrist? So I've actually had some interesting thoughts on the Antichrist. One, there are many Antichrists. We understand this. So there's been Antichrists since the Bible was written, since before 90 AD, so there will be more Antichrists. I think there's a bunch of Antichrists. I think there's spirits of Antichrist. I think one of the things to know about people is they change. And I think that's what's going to, I think there's a good argument that the Muhammad, what is it called? The hijab, basically the Muslims savior. Basically, if you look through it, go through all the things that the Muslim savior does, is basically everything that the Antichrist does. So it's very possible that they're very connected. I don't know if that's the ultimate Antichrist, but I think there's something there. And we know that with the Abrahamic religions, right, with Islam, very similar to Christianity, we can see a little bit of overwhelm, how people could be deceived into thinking that they're the same, which is what the Antichrist is going to do. The Antichrist is ultimately going to deceive people. I don't think he's going to be somebody who shows up with red face paint and horns. I think he's going to be convincing. And so, or you could even argue about who the Jews think is the true Messiah, because people argue there's some guy over there that's the true Messiah. I haven't looked into it too much, so you could make those cases. But I think a really good argument could be somebody who Christians really like, who goes astray, and that's why you need to be careful who you follow. So Christians could be all. I mean, I have no idea. I'm not going to start naming names and politicians and stuff like that. But I said people change. Someone could start off really, really good, and then they start going off the deep end. And I think in my mind, somebody like that would make a better argument for an Antichrist than someone who was like always just straight up evil. You're supposed to be deceived. How are you going to be deceived if it's very obvious this guy is super anti-Christian? I feel like this guy is going to be super pro-Christian, or girl, I don't know. This person is going to be super pro-Christian, deceive a lot of Christians to follow him, at least nominal Christians. I don't know, maybe. Anyway, that's a whole conversation. I think, and then at some point, this person is going to, over time, just slow fade. Some people aren't even going to realize it and take them with them. I think that to me makes a lot of sense of at least an Antichrist, maybe the ultimate Antichrist, somewhere with that. So that's my thing is, I think it's either who the Jews choose as their new Messiah, right, in replacement of Jesus because they rejected Jesus. So whoever that guy is, maybe in our lifetime, or it's whoever the Majin. Somebody help me, I forget. I'm not the most knowledgeable about Islam, but whoever they believe is their savior, that person, or someone who the Christians clearly follow, and then all of a sudden he goes off the deep end. That's my thoughts too. I don't think the Antichrist is going to start off really obviously Antichrist. I think he's going to become Antichrist. But a lot of different ways to look at that. So it is. Eleazar is a wonderful example of his master's faithful messenger. He told him his master was great. He told him his master's son was the heir. He wanted one who would leave her home and live with his master's son. He was pressed for a reply. He didn't just want to know it. He wanted to know it right then. Tell me so I can know if I'm successful or not. This is a quote from Spurgeon. Well, says one, I'm glad that you have spoken to us. I will think it over. No, friend, I do not mean that. I don't want you to think it over. You have had enough time to thinking. I pray that God's Spirit may lead you to an immediate decision, right? Decide now. Genesis 24. So Panther 69 says, no one knows until he's revealed, right? Which is also why I think it's very plausible that the Antichrist is not necessarily super Antichrist at the beginning. It won't be revealed right away. And plus, it's deceptive. Many Christians will be deceived. So if it's somebody, that's what I'm saying. Why would it be someone who's clearly an Antichrist if he's deceiving Christians? He's got to be something about him or her, has to be something deceptive that Christians would fall. It actually says somewhere in I think it is Revelation, it says, the times had to be cut short, because if they weren't, even the elect would have been led astray and deceived. So something about the Antichrist would be so convincing and deceiving that even those with the most solid of doctrines, loving God the most, will be somehow misled. You understand? So don't ever think that you're not going to be able to be misled. It says literally there's the Antichrist and the end times are so bad and so deceptive that even those who truly love God could be misled if God didn't if Jesus extended the time. Does that make sense? So always humble yourself. Don't ever think that you're not going to fall for something. Don't ever think that your doctrine is so perfect and you love God so much that you would never slip. That is a dangerous place to be. I mean, it's good to have that hope and expectancy, but be real and be humble. All right, Genesis 24, 50 through 53. Then the family is going to agree basically to give Rebekah to Isaac, and Abraham's servant is going to give some more gifts. Then Laban and Bethuel answered and said, "The thing comes from the Lord, and we cannot speak to you either bad or good. Here is Rebekah before you. Take her and go, and let her be the master's son's wife. And the Lord has spoken." And it come to pass that Abraham's servant heard these words, and that he worshipped the Lord, bowing himself to the earth. That the servant brought out jewelry and silver and jewelry of gold and clothing and gave them to Rebekah. And he also gave precious things to her brother and to her mother. More cadence, more rhythm, like I said. But at some point in this point, she would have had to say yes, right? It's her choice too. Laban and Bethuel answered, so they're both in accord. In light of the evident hand of God's providence and the wealth of his servant's master, the answer seemed to be obvious to Rebekah's brother and father. Quickly decided that the thing comes from the Lord. The Lord has spoken. They also had some say a little bit in it, but ultimately she could say the yes or no at the end. So they brought out jewelry of silver and jewelry of gold and clothing. And the gifts given to Rebekah and at the well were only the beginning. With an agreement that from Rebekah and her family to marry Isaac, she received even greater gifts as a sign that she would become the one with whom would inherit all of Abraham's wealth. Understand that this promise to Isaac is now going to be trickled over to Rebekah. He also gave precious things to her brother and her mother, and not just blessed her, but blessed her family. When an agreement of marriage has been made, it was customary for the bridegroom or his representative to give the family of the bride gifts as a dowry to demonstrate his financial ability to provide for his wife. We talked about that before. Genesis 24, 50 through 60. Then the servant indeed intends to depart quickly. Rebekah agreed. Like I said, everything's very immediate, very quickly, very now, fast. And he and the men that were with him ate and drank and stayed all night. And then they arose in the morning, and he said, "Send me away to my master." But her brother and mother said, "Let the young woman stay a few more days a few more days, at least 10. After that she may go." And he said to them, "Do not hinder me, since the Lord has prospered my way. Send me away that I may go to my master." And then they said, "We will call the young woman and ask her personally." Remember, ask her personally. They said to Rebekah, "Are you willing to go with this man?" And she said, "I will go." And so they sent Rebekah on with her sisters and her nurse and Abraham's servant and his men. And they blessed Rebekah and said to this, "Our sister," this is probably in a refrain of a song because of how it's refrained in scripture, in kind of paragraph form. "Our sister, may you become the mother of thousands of 10,000s. May your descendants possess the gates of those who hate them." There's just a lot here. Like I said, she could say yes or no. But also what this is, there was a little bit of celebration real quick. And he's like, "Now let's go. Let's go." And it's like, let's go immediately. And this is her heart too. Why am I going to stay here? I'm going to go. And this is why, I mean, people can do whatever they want, when when you decide that you really want to get married, I don't know why you would wait like 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. That makes no sense to me. Look, this is the model. I think this is perfect. If you found the person, like, get married, like find the person, right? Date, court realistically. Once you made that decision, what's keeping you? Do not hinder me, since the Lord has prospered my way, right? I already know this is what I want. I don't need to wait anymore, right? So that's why sometimes Christians do get married kind of quick. I think that courting is appropriate, but I say courting to marry, not just dating to date. Dating to date, I think, is stupid. I think it's dumb. But I think courting to marry is good. And once you've made that decision, and once seek wise counsel, make sure you pray through it, have marriage counseling, stuff like that, all this stuff. Just go. Like, what are you waiting for? Like. And this is what they did back in the day. Is what are you waiting for? Go. Like, the modern dating is just like trying people out and trying to find reasons to disqualify them, and then having a way out if it doesn't work. That is not a covenant. That is not the way God intended it to be. You're going to find out things about them, and you're going to work through them because they're people. Everyone could be disqualified. Even the most perfect person for you or for me or for anybody is going to have things that you're going to have to work through. That's just part of it, because guess what? We're marrying humans that are faulty. And when people date and then they live with each other and all this stuff and then they're doing all this, they're going to find faults with them. Of course you are. Of course you are. Because people are difficult to live with. I'm difficult to live with. I'm a pain in the butt. You know, like when you actually have to live with a human that's a human who's being human. So she's like, well, why do I wait? Let me just go. Let's just do this. Like, I'm not going to spend, you know, it even talks about 10 days. Not even 10 days. Let's just go. It's a little bit different in that custom, but that's kind of the heart. They knew what they wanted, so just go. Just go. Just do it. There's no point to wait. Send me away to my master. Abraham's servant was focused on urgent on his message. After a 900-mile journey, right? He stayed one night as destination and then returned a great distance. That's why I don't fault this dude for chilling at least one night. It's okay, man. Dude went 900 miles, didn't stop. Finally got his answer. Took a brief moment to breathe, and then back, right? So even that's why I say, like, it's still obedience, right? And they still probably need to sort things out, sure, say goodbyes, stuff like that. But once you did that, we're good. We're good. Let's roll. Rebekah's family, right? Let the young women stay with us a few days. Rebekah's family first wanted their departure some 10 days. Eleazar remained focused on his mission and replied, do not hinder me as the Lord has prospered his way. Same thing. You know, what does the guy say? He says, oh, when he wants to go follow Jesus. He's like, wait, first let me go bury my dad, right? Which is actually probably more of, if dad probably didn't just die. It's possible, you know, but he would have had to bury his dad, and he would have had to go through the mourning process, it would have been the whole thing. He said, no, follow me, now, go, like, do your stuff. Realistically, what that probably was is not bury my dad, is not like he just died, so like have a funeral for him. When that is said, the most likely interpretation that I've read is that, hey, my dad's old, let me just wait till he passed away and then I'll go with you. Like, that's kind of the idea. So it was much more long. And we know that, look, if he asked for 10 days, he might be asking for another 14 days, another 13. Like, you just don't know, like, he's going to ask for more and more. It's like, no, our thing is successful. Let's go. Let's rock and roll. Right? Focused on what God has done. You know, go. The moment that he says it, go immediately. Then it's like we want God. That's another thing. We want God to move instantly. But when it comes to us, we want 1,000 confirmations. We want 1,000 Bible verses to confirm it. We want to hear it. We want all these things. We're perfectly lined up. But with God, just do it. But when it comes to us, we're fine to take as long as we want to be obedient. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. It's a whole thing. We can talk about that. So he says, okay, that was a quote from Spurgeon. So perhaps, he said, this is a quote from Spurgeon, he thought perhaps there was more golden bracelets to be had, that he was parting with his sister rather too cheaply, that he must not let the priceless gem go out of his hand too soon. It also could have been a greedy thing. We don't know. I mean, based off how he said this, it's possible that there's something within how he said it was more like he was greedy, like he wanted something more, like more gold, more flocks, whatever the gifts were, maybe more gifts. And the more time that he spent with them, the more that he would get this stuff. But we don't know. We don't know truly the heart, what was being said and how it was being said. She says, I will go. This is what I said. The women can still choose, even in arranged marriages. They can say yes or no. They still had choices and freedoms to say things and to say yes, right? But she showed remarkable willingness to leave everything she knew in order to be with a bridegroom she'd never seen. Her terms, I will go, are worthy words of faith. And this is something that we should aspire to. Words of faith, of we will go. When God calls us, we will go. Whether we see everything perfectly or not, whether everything lines up or not, we will go. We've seen enough. And also understand this, God's hand was in this. So it's not that she just saw some guy with a lot of money. I think of like Prince Ali Aziz, right, from Aladdin. But that she knew that God's hand was on it. And everyone knew that God's hand was in it. So that was a little bit, so she wasn't just being like shallow, like a gold digger. It was about God's hand being in it. And if you know God's hand being in it, then she had that even more confidence of knowing, no, like, this is where I need to be. And this is what I need to do. I don't even want to tarry, right? It wasn't necessarily that she was just after his money. She was after God's will. Because she was after God's will, then she knew and could be confirmed and confident to go after this. All right, so she says, do not hinder me, I will go. The servant was determined to leave promptly, as Rebekah determined to make her home with her new husband. She understood that her loyalty should be with her new family. And this is how you leave and cleave. You leave from your family. You're still respectable to them, but you then are your own family. Her, at that point, so understand too, back in the day, when you become betrothed in Hebrew culture, you basically have the same qualifications of like a marriage. So she was already under like, she was no longer committed to her personal family by blood. She was then under the husband's basically a lot of the different rights of a spouse at that point. And so she at that point enacted to say, look, it's because she said yes to her husband, she's not going to say yes to her dad. And this is something that some marriages need to understand. Like as a son, my dad and my mom are not my ultimate authorities anymore, right? We are then one. We have to sort things out too. And then same thing with my wife. Her parents are not her ultimate authorities. We are one. Well, ultimate is God, right? Ultimate authority. There was an episode of Boy Meets World, and I remember, does anybody like Boy Meets World? I really like that show. My wife introduced me to that. I actually didn't watch it when I was younger. Yeah, I know. I was missing out. So there's an episode of Boy Meets World where Topanga and gosh, what's the guy's name? Now I'm Corey and Topanga, right? They get married, and what happens when they get married is they want to sign off on a new house, and they have got all these things, and he's like, and he wants their dad to sign off on the new house with them. See, Dad, right? Many millennials and Gen Zs need to listen to this. And what he said, come on, Dad, just co-sign for this lease, or just co-sign for this mortgage. Like, come on, we just need this. And the dad said no. And he thought his dad was so mean. Like, how could you, Dad, not help us get a home? We need a home, And his response was, when you said yes to Topanga, when you said yes to your future wife, you are saying that you are now your own man, you're your own family. Not that the dad wouldn't help ever, but basically you are in charge of Topanga, and you need to take care of her. And the burden is on you. We talked about this before, like kind of how Eleazar didn't like let her struggle, but basically like didn't step in, right? Is the dad's not going to step in and save. He is not responsible for his daughter anymore. I guess there's like levels of that. Okay, so I'm not listening like you like to neglect your kids in an unhealthy way, but it's like no, like Corey said, I will take care of her, and so he says, because you said that, I'm going to let you do it. And he did not co-sign for the home and the mortgage. They ended up getting this junky apartment, and then he needed help on the apartment, and the dad said, no, I will not help you fix the apartment. I know that seems kind of harsh, but I think it was a good analogy of like what happens when you get married. You need to get off your parents' insurance. You need to get off everything. You need to become independent. Does it have to happen right away? No, I get it. You need to kind of phase into it sometimes, right? But no, they shouldn't still be paying your car payment. They shouldn't be paying your house payment. You don't need to be living under their roof. Like, you need to be independently taking care of your spouse, or working together to be independent. And this is what she was doing. Immediately she recognized that I'm now independent of my father. And not disrespectful, okay? Not disrespectful. Hear me out, okay? Because you also have the whole generation that doesn't speak to the parents and is mad because they didn't order the vegan dish for Thanksgiving or something totally stupid, right? But there's not that. But you need to be independent, right? And the dad needs to stop fathering the children. The mother needs to stop mothering the children. The relationship has legitimately changed, and parents need to realize that, right? They need to realize that their children are no longer like the ones that they're. Did you get what I'm saying? There's all these dynamics, and I feel like people living at home till they're like 35 or 40. Listen, I lived at home for a long time. I'm not saying there's a right or wrong way to do things. I'm just saying like independence is very real. And there's one thing if you can't go too. There's plenty of people who have medical issues, problems, and that. I'm talking about when you say you want to get married. That to me makes no sense. Like, I get it, like you're single, you're living at home, save money, all that stuff. When you say that you're going to be engaged to someone, married to somebody, and I get it, you might need a little bit of time to get on your feet, but this should be the goal. And it is not just, I'm going to stay here forever and mooch off my parents. No, as a man, you should want to provide for your family. That should be a deep desire for you. And that's why Corey didn't move into the house right away. They didn't get their dream home right away. What did they do instead? They got a dinky little apartment. And guess what? He fixed the faucet. And the same thing here, as Rebekah doing the work herself, he had a pride knowing that, you know what? This is a dinky apartment. It's tiny. It's musty. Not everything's perfect, but it's ours. We put in the work. And there's something about that you can never put a word on and a money on. And so this is what Rebekah's like, I'm going to leave from my father, and I'm going to be joined with my husband. And it's something very beautiful that a lot of people, especially in this culture, don't do. And like I said, I understand there's way more caveats to that. There's a lot more complications than just move out. Okay, I get it. But what I'm saying is the goal should be independence, and to rapidly be independent. She's like, no, I want to go now. I want to go now. I want to be independent now. I want to be with my husband now. I want us to be one unit now. Like, I want us to be together. Right? Yeah. The servant was determined to leave promptly, right? And she was determined to make her home with a new husband, right? If the world does not succeed in persuading the believer to abide in the world, it will seek to delay his exit. When you decide to go with the Lord, the world will applaud your devotion, but will say, don't rush, abide a few more days, at least 10, then go. That's what the world says with us when we say yes to Jesus, right? So people are like, no, it's fine. Oh, you into that Jesus stuff? Like, take your time. It's okay. You don't have to start going to church all the time. Look, and I don't want you to be legalistic, but it's like, there's a new song that came out. I think it was by Tribal, and he's like, listen, I'm in a new crowd now. I'm in a new group now. You're gonna slowly, cut different ties as you start to walk with God. They're gonna want to keep you back, and some of those ties need to be changed. Some of those relationships need to change. They need to adjust. Kind of like with Rebekah and her parents, like with you and some of the people who used to speak into your life. It's kind of like when you're in a marriage, some of the relationships you have are going to need to change. If anyone speaks against your marriage, you need to get them out of your life or put them on the sideline. That's what I'm saying. Like me and my wife, the people we go to, we don't talk to a lot of people about our marriage. But when we do, they're the only people that support us. My friends that say, listen, when I look at you, I see your wife. Don't come to me and want me to say, oh, poor Josh. Your wife is really this or that. He's going to say, dude, you need to make it right with your wife. You need to fix this. Or, hey, this is what God is working on you, focusing on me. Not, yeah, you should leave her because she is this and that. No, those are toxic, terrible people. You need to get all of those people out of your life. If you're following those Instagram followers, those Instagram, TikTok people, they're all like, it's all about you, girl. Make yourself happy. She ain't making you happy. Leave. Unfollow that person immediately. Those people, that is terrible advice. You need only people in advice that are pro your marriage. Now, I get it. There's abusive situations. Okay, so that's why you need to be involved in a church, in a community that's godly, that can speak into you, right? And you have a pastor. Go to marriage conferences. Even if your marriage is doing great, go to marriage conferences. Even if your marriage is doing great, go to do marriage, not consulting, counseling, stuff like that. Build into it, sort of stuff like that. But yes, so, and same thing with Christ, right? We need to only be around people, well, not only, you hear my mind, like you still need to be in the world, but the people who are really going to pour into you, not that other people can't, because they can, is really the people that are for your relationship with God. Not people like, nah, it's fine, man, just have another swig, or nah, it's fine, or you need these people that are going to build you up, otherwise you're going to fall. The bad company is going to corrupt. It's going to do it. And if you're around people and all they're thinking about is stuff that you are trying to get away from, it's going to be bad. You're going to have to maybe not cut ties, but change relationships. It's going to have to happen. Okay? So and this is what she's doing. She's kind of, and then I'm not saying there's anything wrong with her dad. Nothing wrong with her dad. Loving person, caring person, but she didn't need that influence in that way anymore. And that is completely biblical. And it is okay to create distances from people who you used to live with and be with, in the world. Now that you're with Christ, it's okay. Still be loving to them, still care for them, still be around them. You're in the world still. You don't remove yourself. Like, I don't know, the whole Amish thing doesn't make sense to me. I don't understand. They're like not even part of the world. You're supposed to be in the world, not part of it. Not apart from the world. Like, you're supposed to be in it. So there's that. Anyway, I could go on and on about that. I'm gonna try and finish this up real quick. I think this is the last one. Okay, this is the last thing, real quick. All right, Genesis 24. Shoot, you know what? I'm trying to be better about ending on time. So I will get to this next time. I'm gonna get real quick. If you guys have questions, prayer requests, stuff like that, I'm gonna try and look at them real quickly, and then I'll pop off. I'm trying to get done quicker. I'm sorry. I'm really bad about going over my time. All right, no one knows data. Panther atheist. Small Beginning says, Panther, my atheist mother would object to all the slaughtering God did in saving them. She would say the killing of the Egyptian babies was abhorrent. Yes, that was bad. That was Pharaoh who did that. Even though they'd be just about the only Egyptians to go to heaven. Right. I'm trying to understand what the question is. Okay, so Small Beginning says, Panther, my atheist mother would object to all the slaughtering God did in saving them. Oh. Okay. So let's talk about this. So basically what happened is there was a plague, and in the plague, it was the death of the firstborn, right? The deal was, so that's what people focus on, right? So we'll just take the Noah's Ark, right? There was a judgment, and the judgment bringing a flood to the world, right? So same thing, right? Or Jesus, right? So we got several examples of this happening, right? This judgment comes, babies die, right? This judgment comes, right? The world is flooded, people die, right? This judgment comes, people go to hell, right? But what they don't understand is something happened in between then. All anyone had to do is they had to put the blood, they just had to be obedient. That's it. Just put the blood on the doorpost, and that angel would pass over. They all knew, right? We know this too because there was I think, which plague was it? There was one of the plagues that said that some of the Egyptians obeyed, okay? We don't have any proof of the Egyptians obeying in this, but we know that there were plagues where some of the Egyptians avoided it because they were obedient. So when you see this, you say, oh, God provided a way out. They chose to reject what God said, and then they felt the consequences. Noah preached for 120 years and opened up the ark, okay? He said anyone can get in, right? He provided a way out, but people rejected it. When the door closed, the flood came, right? When the angel came, the babies died, right? When Jesus gives you a way. All you have to do is accept what he did on the cross. That's it. But you choose to reject. Once the door closed, after your death, when you die, then you're going to see the consequences. So people like to think of like, oh, God did this XYZ bad thing, and therefore God is bad. One, there's a whole moral dilemma. You have no proof of what morality is if it's just what you want, because it's Darwin, survival of the fittest. So if the only things that are good are the ones that benefit you, then like that's a whole subjective morality. There is no subjective morality. Everything's subjective, which is in itself something that's objective. So you literally can't even stand on everything being subjective, because it literally argues itself. So there's a lot of logical fallacies there. But with what you're saying is God didn't want anyone. It says very clearly, God does not take the pleasure in the destruction of the wicked, right? But at the same time, he's just. That's part of his qualities. And understand too, with the babies, if a baby is somebody is passed away before the age of accountability, then they go to be with heaven. Go to heaven to be with Jesus. So we know this too, because David says this when his son passes away. He says, I'm going to go to my son one day, or something like that. So we know that. So they're okay. Honestly, that was one of the nicest things. I don't know how to say this. That's not the word I want to say. Something that you can rest in knowing that all those, they were okay, because they were innocent babies. They all were good to go, went right up to heaven, right? Or I guess, or what, Abraham's bosom, whatever. They end up being with the presence of the Lord. So that situation, you could use the ark. You could even use any of the judgments. And honestly, a lot of the judgments, Joshua, David, destroying all the people, very clearly, hey, if they're in the land, destroy them. They can always leave. They can always leave. They chose to stay. They chose to ignore what God said. That's why I said, God all the time speaks about judgments, warnings, consequences. And he just says, listen, do this. If you choose to reject, consequences will happen. It would be like somebody telling me, I'm trying to think, if I had a dog, this is not a good example. This is a terrible example, okay? But just as an example, if I were to tell Panther, if I were to tell Panther, yo, Panther, don't play in the highway dressed in a deer costume, okay? I told him that. That's what I said. Don't do it, because there's rush hour traffic's going to hit at 5. It's going to go super fast, right? And Panther goes, and he plays on the highway in a deer costume, and he gets hit. And then they come to me and say, Josh, I'm so mad at you because he got hit. It's like, whoa. I didn't cause the car to hit him. I told him what to do. And I told, or maybe the car was mine. Who knows, right? But the point is, I said, don't do it. He chose to do it, and now he's bearing the consequences. That doesn't make me terrible. I was trying to tell him, don't do it. But I ultimately let him be free to have his own freedom. That would mean knowing that me like on a snowplow, I'd be like, listen, I know you like to play in the highway. Don't be playing in 4 minutes. I'm coming in 4 minutes. It's happening in 4 minutes. Get off the highway. Take off that stupid deer costume and get out of the highway, right? That's what I'm trying to do. And then I hit him, say, oh, you are so unloving and so evil and so terrible that you hit a Panther. It's like, no, I was trying to call him the whole time, and he turned his phone off. After he said, nah, dude, nah, I don't believe in you. You don't drive a snowplow. Nah, I'm fine. Nah, it's cool. I'm shooting a music video, whatever. And then he stops answering my calls. He's like, well, what were you? I said, dude, I was trying to call you. This is what God does. This was what happened with Israel. I said, listen, anyone could have put the blood on the doorpost. Anyone could have gone into the ark. Anyone can say yes to Jesus. Anyone could have left the land of Canaan and stuff like that. They could have removed themselves. All these scenarios could have arguably been avoided. But we chose to ignore it. And because we chose to ignore God, and rather than being like, oh, it was our choice, no, we want to blame God. No one ever wants to take responsibility, right? And I'm sure a Panther would try to sue me in court. He would try to find a way to make it my fault, even though he was wearing a deer costume in the middle of the highway. You know what I'm saying? Thank you, Panther, for being my scapegoat for that analogy. But that's what happens. So God doesn't take pleasure in the destruction of the wicked. He wants all to come to repentance. All right, I'm going to go a little bit fast. She would say that this is acceptable. Or she said God about it. When she stopped, need to do something about it. The babies were innocent in God's eyes, so they would go to heaven. Same thing that I would say. Thank you, Panther. The Egyptians, they turned instead of their false gods, they would go to heaven. Also know that many Egyptians did follow after the Israelites. Many Egyptians went with them. There's a funny, it's like a series called The Promised Land. Go ahead and watch it. It's super funny. But there's a joke where there's like an Egyptian kind of like hiding among the Israelites, and there's like a bunch of jokes about it. But basically, that's what happens. That they came with the Israelites. They didn't all have to stay in Egypt. Okay. Okay. Mother's not reconcilable in loving a powerful God. So let's just lift up Small Beginnings mother real quick and family. We just lift up Small Beginnings family. That you say in Acts that you and your entire household will be saved. We just ask for this. We just lift it up. We just ask that they would be saved. They would be sensitive to your spirit, and they would be just willing to see you for who you truly are and to come into a relationship with you. In Jesus' name, amen. We can tell a few seconds of pain is worth infinite peace, not justifying it, just saying, right, that's it. You have to kind of look at you have to look at the world without just the world. So it's more than just material. So we just say, oh, well, it hurts here or it's bad here, so therefore it's always bad. God doesn't say that everything is good. He says that he will work good from everything, right? He'll work all things to the good from those who love him, being conformed to the image of the Son, being transformed to the image, right? So there's stuff there that we need to understand that will not feel good here, is not good here. God will ultimately make good come from it. But it doesn't always happen in this life. That's one of the examples. The pain of a mother who loses a baby lasts their whole life. I get that it was to pressure Pharaoh, but it's the pain of the mother, and that's the problem. And you know what? And that's why David, and that's what I'm going to say. That's why David was such an inspiration, because David lost a child, and he grieved, and God even said, "Hey, your child's going to be lost," and he wept, and he put on mourning and everything, and he prayed and asked God, that there's any way that this could not happen. And at the end of the day, and he did that all the way up until his baby passed. As soon as the baby passed, he stopped mourning, he started worshiping, because he knew that one day he would be with his child. One day, he says, one day I will go to him, but he will not come back to me. And that's why also there's a consolation of knowing that we do not mourn like those without hope. And this is funeral season. We have a funeral tomorrow, which is, I may or may not be on tomorrow because we have a funeral. It's just, death is not good. I'm never going to say death is good, but it's a graduation. When you believe in Jesus, when you trust the true God, it's translation. It's a graduation. It's not the end. And so she will one day be with her. But your mother won't be with her unless she accepts Jesus. So that's something that if she truly, she truly believes in her heart, Jesus Christ is Lord, and he was raised on the third day to die for her sins, then she will see him again, the baby again. And I understand, even these Egyptian mothers, they can see him again. So there's a lot there, and I'm not diminishing it. It's painful, it's hard, it's difficult, but that's kind of my thought on that. Yeah, it is a pain, it is hard, but understand that God will make good come from that. That's what I'm saying. But it might not look the way we want, and it might not be in our life. Who died, if I ask? So we're talking about the Egyptian babies for the final plague. But the person who died was at my church. One of the elders at our church, he passed away. But that was my situation. And then I think Small Beginnings sounds like her mother had a miscarriage. So yeah, I think that's what they're talking about. Raymond J. All right, no, they did it willingly. That's how they served their God. People were messed up back then. They do now. By the way, that's why abortion and stuff is such a hot topic. That's why, honestly, a lot of Republicans will tell you that is like the number one topic that they can't get away from. They may love a lot of things and support a lot of things that are on the Democratic side, but because of abortion being what it is and such a dividing point of being so serious, is they can't go with it. So, and this is not to get political, but that's why, yeah, it is. But we know that even when those things happen, that God will ultimately bring things from the bad things that happen. And back in the day, they used to sacrifice their kids all the time for their own well-being, right? I'm not going to get into that. That's a different topic, but I'm going to keep going. I think you're confused. I'm talking about when the spirit of the death came down and killed the firstborns of the Egyptian. Yes, so Small Beginnings, let me know if I answered your question, because I think I did. Oh, sorry, lots of that in the Old Testament. That's what I'm trying to say. Maybe the car was mine. That'd be so funny. That would be really unique if it was your own car that hit you. But okay, all right. So I think that's everybody. I'm trying to get off here a little. I'm trying to be more on time of getting off. So sorry, I've been over a little bit. You guys are awesome. Bless you guys. Like I said, if you do enjoy these, it's the shirts. They're all boldfollower.com. Type in live stream to get 10% off. Order them before the beginning of December to make sure they get there for Christmas. Otherwise, they might not get there. You guys are awesome. Do appreciate you guys. I'm going to pop off here. Just so happy that we're together. Yesterday was Thanksgiving, and I was very thankful for you guys. I actually thank God for you guys and everyone who's on the feed. And we're just continuing and doing what we can as long as God provides an outlet for it. So you guys are awesome. Thank you, Panther. Thank you, Small Beginnings. Thank you, Rain Man. Thank you, everybody who was in the chat and talking here and there. Even BTBFBG. I hope I answered your question, your side. But bless you guys. We'll talk to you later.